Hello, everybody. This is J.R. Arsenal with Enjoy the Journey. Today we have Doug Wing. Doug is one of the founding family members of a ladder company that you've probably heard of and wanted. It's the Little Giant Ladders. And Doug is with us waiting. Doug, I'm going to introduce you. How are you doing, Doug?
Hey, JR. Good morning. I guess it's afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here in Utah. So,
yeah. Now, Doug, you've been with Little Giant Ladders, and then you basically started working as a kid with your dad. If I remember the story right, it's like you were around 11 or something like that and helping out.
Yep, that's true. It's the only place I've ever worked my entire career, and it was wonderful. It was great to work with my dad and also my mom and my brother and my sisters and some cousins, but that is not easy working as family. But it was a great opportunity, a great experience, and I was very blessed to spend my entire working career there.
That's cool. Tell me about how did your dad just come up with this idea of this foldy ladder, or how did that come about?
Well, it was kind of interesting. My dad was very successful in life insurance, and he worked for a company that was based out of Salt Lake City and was one of their top producers. Because my mom was from Germany and my father spoke German, they asked him to open an office in Germany. And so him and another employee of this life insurance company went to Germany, started an agency there, and my dad's partner saw the Little Giant Ladder, or what was then wasn't called Little Giant, but it was built by a company called Waku, W-A-K-U, and a German house painter invented this product. And again, it was pretty raw, it was pretty crude, but the original, kind of the design was there. And my father's partner saw it, I believe, at like a home and garden show in Germany, really liked it, and talked to my dad several times about seeing this ladder. He finally talked him into it. And then my dad got pretty excited, and then it went from there.
So they bought the rights from this German inventor, Rube Goldberg type, to use an old term.
Well, what happened first is that this was in '72 was when the company started, and so what happened is that my dad bought a container of these ladders. At first, he got a sample from Walter, this Walter that owned the company. He took it back to America and started showing all of his friends. And he got all these pre-orders for ladders. He learned how to show it and present it. And then he bought a container full of ladders, and they did that for several years, and until the company was growing so much that he and the German man, Walter, became good friends, and they worked out a licensing deal. And then we started producing them.
So this guy Walter got rich off of his idea, because you got everybody. Before I met you, I didn't realize how many people had Little Giant. It's like half the people on my block have them and stuff. And it's like you don't know how many cars there are out there to buy one of them, and then all of a sudden everybody's got the same car you're driving, sort of thing.
That's true, but yeah, so everybody did fine, and but it wasn't easy. There was again, this product came over from Germany in the '70s when the economy wasn't real great, and so the exchange between, back then it was not the euro but the mark and the dollar. So yeah, it was a it was an uphill struggle all the way. There was a lot of ups and downs, and but my dad was one of these guys that did not take no for an answer, didn't quit. Has an incredible amount of energy and drive, and just he'll just outwork you. So,
Well, I can imagine. I think I recall the story of he was sleeping on his ladders. He was going door to door with them when he launched the business, something along those lines.
yeah. Well, at first he went to all of his friends and neighbors and tried to sell them to them, and then he's like, man, how am I going to sell this product? This product really needs to be demonstrated. You can't just put it in a store and slap a $300 price tag on it, because nobody knows what it is. It's just compact at like 4 feet or 5 feet tall, and it looks like a really expensive ladder. So what he did was he learned the presentation and decided to start doing home and garden shows, trade shows, state fairs, things like that. So he would, get a booth and fill it full of ladders and try to stop people and show them the ladders.
And then it went from that to he was like Ron Popeil, the guy that did all those Vegematic things, and he had some kind of a infomercial, if I remember right.
Well, you got to remember that the infomercial didn't start until 2004. So you have from 1972 to 2004. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And, in fact, the company was very blessed because of the infomercial, because we kind of were a one-trick pony, and so as the company, it grew really slow, first by doing the shows, and then, slowly we started getting some industrial distributors and a few retail locations and things like that. But we kind of made a mistake in that we didn't innovate more, and pretty soon our patents were running out. And the infomercial really came to be because of really out of necessity and by force. And so if you want me to talk about that, I can, because that's a really interesting story how that came about.
I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure the people listening would too.
Okay, so what happened was, as I mentioned, we were pretty much a one-trick pony with Little Giant. Now, the one thing that we did have going for us was that we had quality, and our products were very good, and they lasted, and it had a great reputation, but we lacked distribution, and we were just kind of, as I mentioned, we had maybe 2 or 3 different SKUs with different sizes. And so when our patents ran out, almost to the day that our patents ran out, there was a product in Home Depot that was placed in there that was a complete knockoff out of China at half our price. And so, man, we were really scrambling, and our sales were going the wrong way. They were actually going backward and down instead of upward. And so we had a meeting, and someone suggested, hey, maybe we should try an infomercial, and to really get things rolling and to pump up the company. The only problem, JR, was that we didn't have the money to do the infomercial. So my dad stepped in and said, all right, I will loan you the money, which in 2003, when it was filmed, was about, I think it was between $500,000 and $600,000 to do this infomercial.
Wow.
He said, I'm going to personally loan you this money, but I want my money back in 6 months, and I want $10 for every ladder that you sell. And he says, I'll be in the infomercial, and I want $10 for every ladder that you sell.
Wow.
So the infomercial was produced in 2003. And my dad was in it, and the 2 cast members from Home Time. And if you remember Home Time, it was, Robin Hartle and Dean, I'm trying to think of what his last name is, Dean Johnson.
Yep.
And so the infomercial was hugely successful. I mean, massively successful. Little Giant went from producing about 400 ladders per day to 7,000 per day, and also went from basically building ladders 5 days a week to one shift to 24 hours a day, 6 days a week.
So was everybody in your little town making Little Giants pretty much?
Yeah, and the good news is my dad did get his money back in 6 months, and he made a few. He did make a little bit on. He did well on those bonuses too.
Nice, nice. So that was that period was like, was it the early 2000s, after the century, and then so what did you do after that? I mean, you I guess your own personal involvement is you literally started at the ground level, sweeping the floor and getting stock and things like that as a kid.
Yes, that's correct. I started out in America. Well, it was in Salt Lake. We had a warehouse at that time, and we would put instruction manuals and our own labels, because the ladders came from Europe. And so we would put our labels on them, and then we would put these rung treads on. We would glue these rung treads on, because Germany had different standards than and Europe did than America. But so I started doing that in this warehouse. Then we moved down south to a new facility, and that's where I was cleaning bathrooms and sweeping, the floors and cleaning up and different things like that. And then eventually we moved to 2 more locations. My dad was really smart. He didn't just give us, more money and more positions and things like that. He made sure we knew everything in the company, every position, every department, and just on a gradual basis, he would give us more opportunity and more chances to grow and learn. And eventually we, went from, gosh, I mean, I did everything from shipping to, manufacturing to, I mean, everything in manufacturing and sales and marketing, and then executive positions within the company. But the one thing we did do is we learned from our past mistakes. And when we after we did the infomercial, and remember, most infomercials only last about 18 months, and Little Giants has been going for 17 years still. We're still doing some infomercials. So the company set some amazing records because of the quality of the product, and really also because of my father, who had such a passion. But we learned from our mistakes by we took a lot of the cash that we had from these infomercials, and we invested it back in the company, and innovated with went into different sales verticals, into the construction industrial markets, and then developed a whole new fiberglass system that's half as light, half the weight as anybody else in the industry. And we could charge twice as much because we were saving companies millions of dollars in savings from strains and sprains and accidents and things like that. So we learned from our mistakes. We grew the company, went into all these different verticals, and then we were able to, just really, really do it smart.
Well, when I was a young homeowner, I wasn't aware of Little Giant, and I was on the East Coast, and let's just say it was brand W.
Yeah.
And yeah, I probably have a bad back still from picking that 30-foot ladder up and trying to move it by myself. They weighed a ton.
Well, yeah, there's a funny story about, I think I know who you're talking about, Brand W. But so when my dad was first doing home and garden shows, the 2 brothers that owned Brand W came into my dad's booth, and they laughed at him. They laughed at him and said, "Wing, you're a fool. You're an idiot. Nobody is going to want this ladder, and you're going to fail." And so my dad said that day that was a huge motivation. And I will tell you that over the last, from the 70s until today, that Brand W has tried to buy our company about 5 times, and we've never sold to them.
That's funny. And they wish you would have sold it back then, because I imagine the price was a little bit more, not factoring even inflation.
Yeah, exactly. And
they're everywhere.
And the funny thing about it is, when we developed this new fiberglass ladder, other companies, including the Brand W, they laughed at us and said, "Why are you building this lightweight ladder? Nobody wants this ladder. You guys are dumb." And within about 4 years, I had been working heavily with the telecommunications companies, and we took all the cable business and the telco companies' business away from Brand W and everybody else. And then about that 4 years later, I ran into the CEO Brand W, and he said, "Man, you guys didn't just take some of the business, you guys took all of the business." And he said, "We're going to get it back." And I said, "Well, good luck to you."
Well, he didn't realize you were a Brigham Young grad and you were just being nice to him, because if you were from the East Coast or the West Coast, you might have had a different set of verbiage that you returned the volley with, so to speak. But
yeah, we're not like that. My father, he always said, "Hey, we're not going to badmouth the competition."
yeah.
And our competitors did that quite often, and we just took the high ground and said, "Well, they make a good product, but we feel like ours is superior. Let us show you the differences." And we didn't put them down. And I think it really served us well over the years that we wouldn't do that, and we just always would point out the difference. And our quality really did and does to this day continue to speak for itself.
So, like you got me fascinated with, and I apologize to anybody listening or watching this on the rebroadcast. You got me fascinated with the lightweight fiberglass aspect. Were you using like a honeycombing technique or something that was an engineered technique versus just, reducing you can't use the wall size and maintain your structural integrity. So is there something I can ask along these lines that's not a trade secret for Little Giant?
Well, it really is. There are some proprietary things that are there in the product that are patented. And
Yes.
so as funny as after we took the business away in the fiberglass market, then the big Brand W and all these other companies, they decided they were going to get into the business. And to this day, they now make lightweight ladders as well, but they can't figure out. And I know darn well that they've bought some of our products and tried to reverse engineer them and things like that, but they still haven't been able to get their products as light as ours. And so, yeah, there's some things in there that we did with materials and then different shapes and things like that. But I can't talk about those things.
No.
But anyway, it's pretty interesting how at first we were fools, and now they're doing it too, trying to anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you got the Coca-Cola recipe under lock and key, they're not going to find out about it until somebody finds out where the safe is, and they haven't so far. So, God bless you guys, and the company. You're still you're the Rolls Royce of what you do, in my book.
Yeah, and we've got some really smart people that work there, and we've invested really heavily in engineering and innovation. And so what we do is I know these engineers that work there, they stay like 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of the competition by continuing to innovate. And we spend millions of dollars on innovation and design and patents and those types of things. But it really has served the company very well. And so there's a lot of companies that just have the same old ladder they've had for years and years, but Little Giant is really known for their quality and now for their innovation.
So it's the same site that your dad moved to from that little warehouse in Salt Lake City. That it's the same plant that where you up through the ranks and stuff, or have they branched out with other locations as well where they're manufacturing different aspects? Do they add lines there under the same roof, I guess, is my question.
We moved we've moved 3 times, 4 times since the early 70s. The facility they're in now is we never thought we'd fill this place. Every time we kept growing, and the place we have now is about 250,000 square feet, and
Nice.
it's packed. So I don't know what they're going to do in the future. Excuse me. I think I talked to my brother the other day, and I think they're maybe looking at another facility, but it could be, back in the East somewhere. I'm not sure. I'm not involved in the company anymore. About a year ago, I sold to my brother.
So how many people are there? How many people work for your brother?
Right now they have, I know there's over 400 employees worldwide for Little Giant. And again, keep in mind that my dad started this, and it was him and maybe one or two other people. And so again, the company has really grown, but people don't realize how long it takes to do, what he's done. And it doesn't just happen overnight. There are some companies now, and maybe in tech and things like that, that have that kind of growth, but this was really, really slow and steady growth. And then the infomercial really helped to catapult the company and take it beyond that. And then after the infomercial, now we have some big retailers we work with, like Costco and Lowe's and Grainger and things like that, that also help out as well.
So, what can I ask? What when you were involved, there was a times where you were going up to the trade shows and customer contacts and stuff and prospect contacts. What were some of your challenges other than, boy, here I am in another motel room?
Well, before the infomercial, the hardest thing about, I worked for quite a few years in sales and sales leadership and things like that. And I think the hardest part of the Little Giant was that it had to be demonstrated for it to sell it. I mean, we had a good name, but not everybody knew about it. And so we had to figure out some, interesting ways how to get it, to sell. I mean, you can't just throw it into a store. You couldn't anyway before the infomercial, but you couldn't just ship a guy 50 ladders and then think, oh, they'll be gone in a month. So in the very beginning, we had to anybody that had outside salesmen, we would train them so that they could replicate what we were doing as far as our presentation, our demonstrations, and just teach people, hey, if you're going to sell these ladders, you've got to take it with you. You've got to show it to people. And so we had to come up with some ways to help the sales guys do that. And sometimes we'd have sales and spiffs and things like that, to where if they'd sell, so many ladders in a month, we'd spiff them back some, they could get some money or gift cards or things like that. And so again, the best thing that you could do is teach the sales guys that in the retailers, the industrial distributors, how to show the ladder. And if you could get some guys to do that, then they would move the product. Or we would go and do joint sales calls with them to some big companies and help them to show them that and to teach them how to do it. And then once you taught them that, then they could go on,
So you were doing that all over the continental United States and Canada?
That's correct. Yeah. So for example, Grainger was a big customer of ours, and they still are. And so we would we would actually go into an area for a week, and we would take our products and just do ride along calls with them. And they take, some big companies like GE and, some big construction companies, hospitals, military, places like that. And, we would just present the product, and then they would give them, the distributor would take care of the orders. And that was very successful as well.
Great. Well, not only that, but that made a lot of sense because you were networking on Grainger, which is like the Walmart of commercial supply.
Yeah, and we were teaching their people how to sell our products too. So we'd be able to replicate us, right, by thousands of people, eventually hundreds of people. And you could get a couple of these guys that would just eat, sleep, and drink Little Giant, and they went out and sold, thousands of ladders. I mean, so that's what I think my biggest challenge was just trying to get people to do what we did, because Grainger's so big, they could go sell anything. I mean, they sell toilet paper, they sell light bulbs, so you have to get people excited about the product and get them convinced that it's something fun to sell, and they can do well doing it.
And so there was this, without getting into the sauce, there was probably a spiff program for them as well, or did Grainger allow that?
I don't think Grainger allowed that, but again, once you go out and show people how many ladders they can sell, then again, so a lot of the Grainger reps, they kind of have their, maybe a handful of products that they really push and promote. And
yeah.
So the idea is just to get them excited about Little Giant. And the good thing about it is their customers, the feedback they got was when they'd sell them something that was Little Giant, they'd say, man, we love this. This is everything you told us it was and more. So again, it was one of these products that made them look good. And so they wanted to push our products.
Well, I've got one of your ladders, and it's great. I mean, I can at one point several years ago, I thought I got to get rid of my old crappy heavy blah blah blah, and I've been looking at this thing, but it's $300, the usual economic thing. And when you have a photography addiction, it's like, should I buy a ladder or should I use that as a down payment for another lens? Should I buy another accessory for my motorcycle, or should,
Yeah,
I need that chrome, but it's certainly a product that I don't regret us having at all.
yeah. And so really the way that we sold, the product, and still do to this day, I think is really the quality. You get what you pay for, and then the safety of them. Could we make them cheaper? Yes, we could, but there's a reason why. And that's one thing that really saved our company too, is when these competitors came out, they made them look exactly like them, but they didn't use the same materials, maybe thinner materials, maybe they didn't know how to weld and different things like that. And so within a matter of months, people would buy these knockoffs and they would break, and they would come back to Little Giant and say, you know what, they look the same, they're half price, but you get what you pay for. In fact, I had a neighbor that had an experience like that several years ago. He had a construction company, and they were down in St. George, Utah, building a house, and there was no place. They needed another Little Giant. They needed another one, and nobody in town had them at that time. And so they went to Home Depot and bought this copy that was a Chinese one at half the price. And this guy, his name was Mike Jones. He told me, he says, man, we were pretty excited because we were thinking we can buy a bunch more of these ladders and they're half the price of Little Giants. But literally within one day on the job, these guys were framers and house builders. Within one day, this ladder broke, and the rungs broke off of it. And so they took it back to Home Depot, excuse me, and they said, we learned our lesson. We got back home, we bought another Little Giant, and we never had a problem with it. And so again, you do get what you pay for. And that's one thing that really helped Little Giant throughout all those years, was the quality. We never compromised on the quality.
And if there ever was an issue, without putting words in your mouth, I'm just guessing it's a premium product at a premium price, and commensurate with that is premium customer service. And for the few times you do get a call about something, maybe nothing, I bet it was more than taken care of.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a great customer service department. I think one of the hardest things for the company during the infomercial time, really, to be honest, is that we had a hard time filling orders. I mean, we just got so slammed, and you've got some people who are upset with you, and you're trying to build them as fast as you can. But again, we never did compromise the quality, and going from 1 to 3 shifts and trying to train people, on the quality was not easy. And, we had we had a couple of times where, well, one time when my dad was still alive, he went down at night one time, and he wasn't happy with the quality, and he was in his house slippers. He shut down the shift, got everybody together and said, hey, you guys aren't producing the quality that I expect. Every ladder that goes out has my name on them.
Yep.
And so he shut down the entire manufacturing process and said, what we're going to do right now is we're going to cut up and scrap 900 ladders, and you guys are going to learn how to build good ladders, because we're not building junk. And so here's my dad. He's in his house slippers and maybe his robe and his PJs, and shut it down, and got everybody straightened around and kind of righted the ship, so to speak.
So you had a lot in your dumpster that next day for whoever the junk man was, or your recycle, or whatever you were doing.
Yeah, the aluminum guy.
There's fiberglass, but there's aluminum. Were you guys extruding your own aluminum too, and all that?
We never did extrude our own aluminum. We always just bought those. locally there, from different extruders. But the fiberglass didn't come until later after the infomercial, and we do our own pultrusions right in Utah.
No.
So
Listen, Doug, what is your greatest lesson that you've learned from being with a great guy like Hal Wing, your dad, and coming through and seeing it come from nothing to a legend in its industry?
Well, if that, there's a lot of lessons that I learned from my dad. I would say the greatest one that I learned from him was he did not quit. He did not give up through all of the trials and the hard times that we had and that he had. I never have met a man who has more self-belief, self-confidence, and was a harder worker than my dad. I mean, how many of us would be willing to go around in a station wagon, be gone 300 days a year from your family, sleep on top of ladders on a foam pad, and eat out of a cooler? And people don't realize that my dad was able to, he was only able to sleep in a hotel about every 3 or 4 nights because he couldn't afford it. So in the morning, he would go into to restrooms and gas stations and shave and brush his teeth and clean up. I mean, how many people are willing to do that? Not very many.
Not very many, exactly. And are you involved in an advisory way with Little Giant anymore, or is your brother pretty much a one-man band with 400 people around him?
Well, I was, even so, when I retired at the end of 2019, I was still the vice chairman of the company and I was a member of the board. But then about 4 or 5 months ago, my brother and I worked out a deal where I was bought out from the company, so I no longer have anything to do with the company. And I'm involved in another company now, which is totally different than Little Giant. So yeah, I have 2 other partners, and we own a bunch of apartments, about 400 apartment doors, and
Wow.
a property management company, and a couple other businesses. And like I said, these are great guys that run the business, and I'm just a silent partner right now. So
Wow, this person that I put up before, I don't know if you can see that.
I can see it. Yeah.
Colleen is one of my high school friends, and so that ladder has a name.
Wow, she's named it Angus. That's a breed of cow, huh?
Yeah, 31.
They're workhorses for sure. The Little Giants. Here's the thing people don't realize is I have had so many people, funny stories. People will come up to you and they say, "Man, I love my ladder. I need to buy another one though right now because mine got stolen." So so people quickly realize you've got to lock these ladders up. You've got to chain them up, even if they're on top of your ladder racks and things like that. But the funniest story I ever had from a guy, he walks into my booth. I'm at a trade show and he says, "I need another ladder." And he goes, "I'm really upset." And I'm thinking, "Oh, what happened?" And he goes, "I got divorced." And he goes, "My wife got the ladder in the divorce." And he goes, "I love it." So, and he said, the thing is, she probably doesn't even use it either. So he bought another ladder from me that day.
Well, that's usually what happens in divorces, personally speaking, is the most valuable things, whether they, I don't know if I missed a torque wrench or not, but, a Little Giant would be a worthwhile thing to retain, I would dare say. Well, Doug, you've been really entertaining, interesting, and informative on this. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And the main lesson I learned is you got to believe in yourself. You got to have a great product and you got to hang in there. And then you're a legend sooner or later. I just love it. And, we have Tom here. I don't know if he's talking about our girth or something, but,
well, going back to your comments about that, the one thing that I'll never forget about my dad, he's passed away in 2008. But out of all of the ups and downs of the company, there was only one guy that I saw that was never nervous, and that was Hal Wing. he always said with a lot of confidence, we're going to make it through this. We've always made it through it, and this is no difference. And so he was just such a confident guy. He could back it up. He was just unbelievable as far as work ethic and his energy, his enthusiasm, his attitude, and his self-belief was incredible. The most confident man I've ever met. He was only 5'7", a small guy, but he had the heart of a lion and would not back down from anyone.
That's a great thing. I think when you were talking, I was thinking of an old quote from FDR: "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And if we have that belief in ourselves and whatever we're doing, whether it's making ladders or getting on live streaming or who knows what.
Yeah. The other thing about my dad is that he was very generous and he treated his employees. This is one thing I learned from him, and the two people that I'm partners with now in another business, we treat our people the same way that Hal Wing did. And my dad had this philosophy. There's a little plaque on the outside wall of Little Giant. It says, "If you concentrate on building the business and not the man, you will not achieve. But if you build the man, you achieve both." And so my dad had this philosophy of, hey, build people, help people, give them opportunities, treat people well, and you will be successful. Kind of like Zig Ziglar, where he said, you can get anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that really is what Hal Wing was all about. There are so many stories we could talk about of him helping employees, and he knew every person that worked there by name and knew something about them. I mean, 400 people, who can do that today? I mean, it's very difficult, but just a very generous guy, a person that loved his employees more than anything in the company, and they knew it and they loved him as well.
That's really cool. I forget the guy's name, but Eastern Airlines was based out of Charlotte. Piedmont. And Piedmont was run by a man like that. And when he had his 65th birthday, all the employees chipped in because he liked the Mercedes, and they bought him SL, a convertible. Can you imagine employees buying a CEO in this day and time? They all chip in and buy him a Mercedes convertible because they love him, because he was the guy, like the same cut from the same cloth that Hal Wing was, where of everything else, and he's so right. The greatest resource we have is each other. And if we believe in something, it's going to work. We believe in each other, believe in the product, and just hang in there. Eventually, it succeeds. And that's been the case in so many things out there. But anyway, I'm starting to pontificate. I hear it going on right now. Doug, it's been a delight having you on my show, and I really appreciate it. And Doug and I are both car and motorcycle guys. So look at that handsome, smiling face there with the wingman, is what we call him. He's going to be on again, but we're going to talk about Ford GTs and motorcycles and some other stuff. I've got a couple shows like that lined up in the future. Doug, thank you so much. Stay on the side a little bit. I'm going to say goodbye to them, and I'll touch base right after that with you. Hey, listen, everybody. Appreciate you being here. It was a lot of fun for me. Doug's a good friend and someone I look up to, and we're going to have a lot of other shows like this. Different people in my life that have positives, great stories to me. And hopefully you feel that way too. What I'd like you to do is like this, if indeed it was of some value to you, and sign up, subscribe, and like we are on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Thursdays at 3, and look forward to seeing you again.